Starting. Here we go.
Okay.
Welcome to the Asshole Podcast, Episode 1. Today I've brought on Prince of Queens to talk about the regressive left and the direction that it is going to go with the new Trump presidency that is about to be installed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before I get your opinion, I think we saw part of this with the Chicago kidnapping, and I wanted to first get your opinion on what you think that has to do with the future of the regressive left and how they're going to correlate from now on.
Well, that is a complicated question. I think that basically what this is my theory. Um, they're losing people left and right.
Yeah.
Even people who were true believers, even people who actually believed in their head that, white people can't experience racism or something like, I cannot, I legitimately couldn't fathom that somebody could be so clueless to reality. Like, just like, that's like saying, a little kid can't shoot you with a gun because they're little or something. Like, it's like, no, anyone can be racist. That's just, how can someone be so stupid to actually think that? I really didn't think so. But I've realized that some people really did think that. And the only reason I know that they were so thoroughly brainwashed is that they have come out of it and they're able to explain now that they no longer think that 2 plus 2 equals 5. They can sort of explain how it happened to them. So people are definitely starting to come out of it, and they're coming out quickly. But the people who are still in it, who are still brainwashed, um, they have no idea how to deal with it. And I think that there's one of the things that people say is that a lot of people kind of they will continue to believe that that bullying white people, bullying men, drinking from male tears mugs, bullying anyone who disagrees with them, which is what they do. They will bully a black lesbian in a wheelchair if she disagrees with them. So they'll continue to do all of those awful things. They won't realize that it's wrong until it happens to them, until somebody throws them under the bus and they are the victim of it. That happens a lot. But now what happens is that a lot of people are waking up, and it leaves the more rabid SJWs to each other, and all they have is each other, and their entire philosophy is based around hatred. So they're going to just start fighting with each other more and more. And I like to speed up that process. I was just on Facebook arguing with people because it's fun for me at this point. Like, I literally like them throwing out insults at me, and I'm not above reporting their accounts to Facebook and getting them banned temporarily because that just makes them furious at this point. I love to see furious SJWs because the quickest way at this point to get something positive is to get them to discredit themselves. Once they start showing how ridiculous, like I was just arguing in a thread, and some feminist girl was calling me a bitch and a hoe and shit as an insult. She's like, "Shut up, bitch! You're trying to come for my friend, hoe." And it's just like, okay, you're supposed to be some sort of feminist, and you're calling a man a bitch and a hoe as an insult. Yeah, you're obviously a lunatic. You're obviously stupid. And I think that that's the direction that the regressive left and fourth wave intersectional feminist social justice warriors are headed. And that can only happen too soon, because once they've kidnapped and are torturing a disabled kid for being white, it's really hard for people to, find any sympathy for them and believe that they had any good intentions, because they didn't. They literally never had any good intentions. The SJWism is about somebody telling them that they can be immoral under the guise of moral superiority, and saying it's basically like, it itself is kind of like the Nazi movement, because it's based around attacking people. That is what SJWism is. That
Exactly.
so the people who were doing it, the people who were really into doing it, it was, they wanted to be bullies. That's what enticed them into it. They were like, wait, there's a whole big pack of bullies, and I can be a part of that, and I can get back at all the people that did me wrong, and be that, straight people, cis people, usually not straight people because these people started changing their genders, but white people, men. It was just vengeance for them, and there, and that's very clear now more than ever. Now that they've lost, it's very clear. So that's that's the answer. Was Does that cover what we
Yeah, that works.
okay.
Um, I also wanted to kind of talk, how likely do you think it is that something like this will happen again? I know personally for me, I feel like events like this always happen in multiples.
Hmm.
Once a trend starts, it usually tends to get worse. So, do you think we're going to be seeing more of this, and do you think it's going to slowly evolve to become more grotesque?
Um, that's really hard to say. I want to say no, but I've been wrong in the past. If you asked me in 2014, um, could the SJWism get any worse? I would have said no. But then we had 2015, which was like the pinnacle of it, and it was just so bad. Like people were. That was the year that Shirtgate happened. Where the guy got humiliated for his shirt and he had to like cry on national television after landing a comment on a probe on a comet.
He
Um,
was the astronaut who wore the quote um, sexist shirt that I believe his wife got him, right?
yeah, or it was a female friend of his made it for him, and yeah, they said it was sexist because it had a slightly scantily. It wasn't even like a. It was like a woman wearing a strapless dress. It wasn't even risque, actually. But yeah, feminists only care about very trivial things because they are sad people that have nothing to really care about. So all of that stuff really peaked in 2015, and then I thought that maybe well, okay, but the people kept going, and there's a saying that I think encapsulates it perfectly for the SJWs. The saying is, when in doubt, shout. And it's like these people they knew that they were losing. They knew that the arguments that weren't on their side. So they just became more and more belligerent and downright violent in many instances. Like you saw the footage of the trans trenders in Toronto attacking Lauren Southern.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Smugly Puff actually got arrested because she stole someone's phone and like broke it or whatever. Um,
Smugly Puff.
yeah, yeah. And it's because these people, they knew that they didn't have any arguments. They were just being bullies. And so I thought that 2016, as Milo predicted, Milo Yiannopoulos called it, was that they overplayed their hand in 2015. They showed that they were just awful people. And like when you show who you are and it's bad, eventually you're going to get yours. And that's what happened to the SJWs in 2016, and that's why Trump won. Um, but when in doubt, shout. And so now there's people who are, literally torturing helpless people, because that's how horrible they are, and they just don't care. They think, they're unreachable because they think the world is so unfair for whatever personal reasons that they have. You can never stop some people for just having complete and utter vengeance towards the entire world because they think that their life is shitty. And if there is a cultural movement of, blaming specific people, there's always going to be people who hop on that bandwagon. So yeah, it definitely could happen more in the future. I can't say that isn't going to be the case. It definitely could happen more in the future, but it should keep in mind that there was a racist attack against a black disabled kid earlier in the year, and I think that the kids were minors and they didn't get jail time. That was really bad. So there's things that haven't left us, and that didn't get much publicity either. Though I also will say that I grew up in a mostly black neighborhood, and I can attest from my own experience. I mean, I went to school in a black neighborhood. I didn't mostly live by there, But racist attacks against white kids happen all the time, like constantly. Kids are getting beat up for being white like every day, you know? And it's just basically, in my middle school, it, kids would get attacked in the hallway all the time, and it was like, you'd just be walking down the hallway and some kid would be like, "What are you looking at, white boy?" All the time, constantly. And it was so bad that you would say something about it to the staff and they would be like, "Well, don't look at them." Basically, like they
Yep.
didn't, so is this going to happen more? Yes, but it's always been happening. I don't know if it's going to be on Facebook Live, and I don't know if they're going to make a big, I mean, if they're going to continue to make a big deal out of it or ignore it, but we've gotten to this point of tension and people are continuing to excuse it. One of the things I was arguing about online was that people were literally trying to say that it was not discrimination. Like, they've already tried to change the definition of the word racism, and then they were even trying to say that white people can't be discriminated against. And it's like, how many semantic mental gymnastics and will you go through to excuse things? Like, what kind of person are you? Like, what who and it was mostly, Asian people who were doing this. I don't know what the motive is, but I kind of think it's just that they okay, this is a sidetrack for what you're saying. I'm rambling a lot,
I
but
understand.
okay. Here's one of the things I've noticed. Asian people right now are some of the worst when it comes to SJWism, because Asian people have a lot of privilege. I would say honestly that Asian people are probably the like, okay, not only do they earn more than white people on average, but I would honestly say, from knowing many Asian friends in my life, Asian people are probably the least discriminated against race in the US, because black people don't fuck with them for being white, and white people are usually cool with Asian people, like, what do you I mean, maybe if you go to a place where there just aren't any Asian people, like if you go to somewhere in the Bible Belt and there's just no Asian people at all, they might hate Asian people. But most white people are totally fine with Asian people, and most black people and Latino people who really just hate white people,
Yeah.
so Asian people have this like really awesome thing going for them where nobody really hates them,
Yeah.
but that's not always been true. There's been a lot of animosity between Asian people and black people,
Between
because
everybody, I think,
yeah, well,
at
especially with,
some point or another.
yeah, a lot of it had to do with Asian people owning stores in black neighborhoods, and there was like a shooting that got really well publicized in the 90s, and black people resented the Korean store owners because they could make money in their neighborhoods and stuff. But one of the things that I find really sinister is the way that these Asian people are hopping on SJWism because it's convenient for them, because they get to say, "Oh, I'm a person of color, I'm oppressed," while they simultaneously throw, they attack white people when it's convenient. But ultimately, that if a black person was, threatening to them, they would call the cops. They have no vested interest in a long-standing alliance with black people, and that is definitely something that has shown itself to be true throughout the years. So there's a lot of, people who are very clearly trying. Asian people, for example, are doing this, but a lot of, white people will do this too. They will hop on the SJW rhetoric as long as it's convenient for them, and they don't seem to realize that this is adding fuel to the fire, and it's creating the white nationalist movement and this gigantic backlash. So, um, you know, all of this stuff is growing on both sides, and um, there's a lot of people that just can't see it. They just can't see it at all. So,
Totally.
yeah, that's the end. So
So
sorry.
yeah. So pulling ourselves back onto the right railroad track here.
Uh-huh.
Um, so what I heard you say is that you think that it will continue because, as you said, we keep thinking that the regressive left can't possibly get any worse, but it always finds a way to get worse.
Yeah.
But you also think that the people on the regressive left side have slightly learned from what they did in Chicago, and
Mm,
probably next time aren't going to make a bread and circus out of it.
I think they're, well, see, you kind of answered your own question by saying, like, they always get worse even when we think that they can't get any worse. So I don't know. And we do know that they're getting charged with a hate crime, but only because the guy was mentally handicapped, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in the world. It's like, no, they people are like, they wouldn't. This Asian girl was saying this. She was like, no, they targeted him because he was disabled. And I'm like, no, they targeted him because he was white, but they picked him because he was disabled. It's like,
Yeah,
and she was, and I know that she wasn't so stupid that she didn't understand that. I think that she was just trying to protect the narrative. She was trying to protect this. So, but when people see that that these kids got basically got off from this crime because nobody actually um you know called them actually racist, like they didn't get charged with a racist hate crime.
nobody
Other
called
kids,
them out.
yeah, well, other people will see that, and they'll and this is another thing that I think a lot of people don't really realize. The way that gang culture works, and prison culture for young people especially. Hold on, let me just drink a little sip of something. Huh, I'm getting parched, and um um the way that gang culture and everything works is that these people, a lot of it's a lot of the time a status thing to have gone to jail, especially for the right reason. And if you know that where you'll get locked up, you might know that your gang will be in there. I think that this girl, the girl who was the one who broadcasted on Facebook,
Yeah,
I think her boyfriend is in jail right now. And so she might have been doing it, she won't go to the same jail as him, but she might have been doing it as some sort of like weird romantic gesture, like I'm as hard as you, or some shit like that. Because that is actually how, I've read some really chilling accounts of youth crime, juvenile detention centers where you get in there, and then if you're part of a gang, half the gang is in there, and then they brag about crimes they committed and they bully other people inside the jail, and it's like that's just what the life that these people do. So you think everybody looking from it from the outside thinks, oh, they're going to get in a lot of trouble, blah 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 blah, and then people are like, oh yeah, did you hear that the judge didn't give them bail?
I did not hear about that.
Yeah, he
Thank
said that.
God.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, but that's actually another thing is that getting released right after the crime, if somebody were to have posted bail for them, they likely would have gotten killed. There would have been some sort of vigilante out there that would have, because there's a few things that like even hardened criminals are not okay with. You don't. They deal with rapists, and they deal with anybody who abuses children or mentally handicapped people. That's like a taboo. So
Oh boy, yes, I do know this.
yeah. So the judge might have been, figuring that if they got released, then they get killed. And so you know, it's really hard to say. People might take the way that this has been dealt with as an opportunity to you know, because the kids who did this, they knew that they did something really bad, and honestly, they have not gotten. They People have continued to make apologies for them, and it's showing that like people are basically saying jump, Okay, basically people are telling white people to jump, and white people continue to say how high. And
Unfortunately.
yeah, and that's really stupid because it's like like there's somebody like me who's a centrist and who's like just tries to minimize conflict. I see that and I'm like, okay, you guys are young people who don't have experience and who get scared. They are going to turn into full-blown white supremacists, and there is a growing movement of that, and people don't understand because they've been fed this lie that white supremacy is so real and it's so big, it's always present, there's always white supremacists everywhere, blah 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 blah, that they don't understand what it's going to look like when it really happens. Like when there's really a big white nationalist movement, they have no concept of what that's going to be like. And if the white nationalist movement gets big enough and these type of incidents keep happening, the white nationalist movement are going to fucking kill people, and they're going to kill a lot of people. They're going to get guns and they're going to fucking go on a terror spree, and they're going to do it. I know how, I've watched Richard Spencer speeches, and I know how these people think. It's like they're not like all of the stupid, black teenagers who fuck Trump, fuck white people, beat people up. They're just stupid. But the white nationalist type people, they're not gonna pick a fight that they can't win.
I know.
And
And I
and
think
and so it's like we have to try our best to make sure it doesn't get to that point, because they'll fucking kill people.
And yeah, that's true. I think that's true of any supremacist nationalist movement, uh, except so far for feminism. For a
Well,
supremacy cult, they have not killed anyone yet in the name of their supremacy cult, and let us
yeah,
pray to God that it stays that way.
yeah. Well, I would say also I don't think that. Yeah, I don't know if the feminists will ever do that. I would say though that like the black supremacists are like they'll do a
Black
few.
Lives Matter.
Well, yeah, but also like the like Ghazi Kotso type people of the world.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and like the crazy guy who killed people in Dallas. Those people. There's this kind of like this like weird. Okay, this. I hate when you say things that sound racist and you don't want to like give too much of a preamble for it, but there's this kind of a cultural thing that black people do a lot where they get all riled up, and if they have like three of them, they think they can just kill every white person in the world, and they get this like super cocky thing, and it's like they're like, oh yeah, and they rely on it, and it gets them. They intimidate people with it. It's like whoa, this black guy is not scared of anything. I better not mess with him. And I feel like black supremacist groups kind of get like that. They get this like crazy confidence where they're like, yeah, we'll kill all those crackers. They blah 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 blah. And then it's like, no, that is entirely dependent upon the crackers not fighting back, because you've never ever once in your life probably had a group of white people that have actually fearlessly fought you back. Every time you've you know gotten all pissed off at white people, you either ganged up on them or you got all crazy and were willing to throw punches when they didn't even want to have a problem with you. That's the only type of conflict you've ever been in with white people.
Yeah.
But
And
what they don't understand is that like with when it gets to people being murdered and tortured, white supremacists will get guns and they will get organized and they will fucking kill all of you. So
yeah, and with the being like in the situation that you're talking about, where I do also go to school right now in a predominantly black neighborhood,
mhm,
I can tell you from experience that I know that these people have never been questioned, because when you question them, they immediately resort to, "Oh, you're racist. Oh, it's just because you're white. Oh,
yeah,
it's just because you're right wing. It's just because you're straight." All the typical buzzwords that they can think of,
mhm,
and they never really stop to actually consider your argument. They immediately just assume that your argument is invalid,
yeah,
which is how I know off the cuff that they've never been ideologically challenged in their households or during the rest of their schooling careers.
Yeah, and there has been a culture that encouraged that kind of behavior because they thought that anybody, what they view as right wing straight white male patriarchy, which is like, apparently has become everything that they might not agree with on the very surface level. They call me right wing, they call me all sorts of. I'm not even right wing, but they this whole thing, this other, this like what basically boils down in their view is white men having an opinion is they thought that white men screwed up the entire world. Everything that white men accomplished is wrong and bad and icky and gross, and now we're gonna and it's shrinking. They also thought that white that this Western civilization, which was created by white men, and capitalism and all this stuff, they thought that it's going away, and that it's that Obama was the start of it, but then Hillary Clinton is going to be the matriarchal leader, the woman, and white men are on the way out, and they're going to be on the right side of history. And they never stopped to consider that maybe that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I do definitely agree with you there that they never thought about whether or not it would actually happen. And, I will give them a certain degree of credit that, there were a lot of groups of white people that did horrible things in the past, but most of them, let's be quite frankly honest, are 6 feet in the ground right now, if not more. So you're dealing with people who are trying to fight against racism by fighting against people who have never been racist or even thought about being racist or thought racist thoughts. But here they are trying to challenge them, and they don't really seem to realize that they're challenging a complete straw man.
Yeah.
It would be kind of like if, in an alternate reality, let's say that black people come in and enslave the white people. Let's just say that it would be kind of just as ridiculous as if it had ended 300 years ago and we still sat there and talked about how they needed to pay us back, even though, or they needed to pay us back, even though nobody alive had ever done that. And it's kind of ridiculous. I really do feel like at this point, the SJWism is really just a victim cult. It even acts like a cult when
Oh,
you
it
look
is.
at it. Even
Yeah.
with the idea of this kind of sacrifice, where you
Yeah.
have people who have to be sacrificed to appease the god, in this case, to appease the justice.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. The sacrifice of this, um, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, because it's like they're saying, "Oh no, the gods are unhappy because Trump was elected. Let's sacrifice somebody." Sort of. Um, I I think that you're right. One of the things that I think is that this is I'm probably not the first person to say this. Social justice is the first widespread actual cult that and it's a very distinct beast. And I just wonder how much people were aware of this, because it's not just social justice; it's fourth wave intersectional feminism. It's this feminism that demands that it's basically it's not even there. There's not any values. There's nothing that that they're actually trying to do. Like, they're not trying to help anyone. They're not, they don't do anything. All they do is have a big long list of rules. There's nothing to do right. There's just many things that you can do wrong. And if you do one of these things that are wrong, you are subject to being attacked by the rest of the group. So it's just this code of things that you have to do, and it tries to absorb other things, like the blob, and it uses social media to do that. Social media, and it also happens in university, but mainly social media. Because everything that happens in university, they still organize with social media. So it's a cult that's spread by product of this having this weird long list of rules that you can violate, and then people enforcing them with mob justice on social media.
Yeah, and really, I think what most people have to realize about social justice is what's the difference really between them and mob rules and per se uh, witch trials and witch hunts. I've often actually compared social justice and the rooting out of racists, bigots, ECT. I've compared it often to specifically even the Salem witch trials, and a lot of people when I do that seem to not exactly be happy with me, but
Mhm.
whatever.
Well, it is like that. um they you know the if you show any sign of being something that they disagree with, then they think that you're all, I was called a white supremacist member of the alt-right because I said that white people get discriminated against. So it was like, it wasn't even that I said something that was untrue, it was that I wasn't constantly pushing the same narrative that they did. And it's like, if unless you're doing everything you can at all time to outwardly prove that you're not a witch, then they think that you are a witch, because it's either you're with them or you're the problem, you know.
Yeah, and then, well, they only seem to feel that way specifically towards white people. If you're not a straight white male,
Oh no, that's
or
actually,
just a white male,
that's
if you're
not
not a
true.
white person, they will make excuses for you that you've been brainwashed. For example, I know one of my friends who is Native American and Asian, and she is heavily anti-social justice and all of 9 yards.
Mhm.
And I've heard from her that she's being told that she's just being brainwashed by me. And, you know, I think it's kind of ridiculous.
Mm, that's interesting. I mean, okay, so I know a lot of people who are subscribers to my channel, for example, are various minorities, some of which multiple, like I have a few black gay guys that post all the time in my comments, and they get called, coons and Uncle Toms and house niggers, and they they almost get it, I would say, in some ways worse. And I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure maybe they think that they're being brainwashed, but they get thrown under the bus, just the same. And I get it really bad because I'm gay, and so you know, people expect me to be complacent with all the bullshit, and I'm very much not. So it's hard to say. It's like, who do they treat worse? Somebody that they think is always going to be the problem, no matter how much they repent, or somebody who they think is a traitor?
Yeah. So, moving on, I
Mhm.
guess. I kind of want to probe your brain a little.
Okay.
Given on what you've seen so far, other than what we saw with the Chicago kidnapping, how else do you think that SJWs and the likes are going to evolve and try to cope with a Trump presidency? Because I know already there's a lot of people who have tried the typical tactics and they haven't been working for them at all. So, what do you
Yeah.
think that they're going to try that's new to cope with that?
Um, I don't think that they're going to try anything new. Honestly, I think that they're going to keep trying the same bullshit and failing and failing and failing, is what I think is what's
Oh,
because
you gotta have a little faith in them. You have to think that they have at least one brain cell in their heads.
um I mean, the thing is that, like, there is people, like, I don't know if you have heard, but Bernie Sanders was, telling the left, hey, stop with all of this relentless identity politics stuff. Like, this is precisely why you lost. Get it through your fucking head, basically. And they continued to misrepresent his words and basically call him a white male. And, but he's fucking a white male. Like, that's all they could say. And they're basically wanting to run the same type of candidate in 2020. And it's like they've learned absolutely nothing. But here's the thing that you have to keep in mind. The way that the Democratic Party is set up is like basically like a corporation, to the point of it being almost like a criminal corporation, because they do very, very many criminal things. So when you get locked up into an organizational structure that, this is hard to explain. I'm not going to do it justice, but like, okay, if your entire okay, if you had to lie to even be a part of this thing, and then you had to be complacent with other lies from both your superiors, but also ordering people to lie, and you could only hire people who were complacent in the lying, because that is what the Democratic Party has become. And that's like a, it's like a crime family. When you get into the crime family, you stab yourself in the finger and you say that you are committed to this crime family more than anything. And so a corrupt body of power is kind of like that. So that organization can't change. It is impossible for it to change, because everybody in the organization is there because it's corrupt. Like they have found their way into it because they decided that they were okay with lying and cheating and giving power to people who would continue to lie and cheat for them. So when any individual within that structure decides that they've had enough, and that they're going to, like the guy, the person who likely leaked the leaks to WikiLeaks, he ended up dead.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Well, they don't know this for sure. People, nobody knows exactly, where the leaks came from precisely. I don't think it came from Russia. I think that that's ridiculous. I think that there was a whole bunch of people that had a motive to hack it. So what you have to keep in mind is that, like, the Regressive Left is basically the Democratic Party and all of their allies worldwide. And this is an organization, I call it Clinton Incorporated. I think that's the best way to look at it, because, the Democratic Party is basically it has carried a legacy since the first Clinton administration that has never gone away. It's been, Hillary Clinton has been a major player ever since then, and Clinton Incorporated is so corrupt and has so much media control that there's, even if somebody wanted to, turn on them, they'd be ousted by the rest of the group. And, some of those people have actually ended up dead, maybe coincidentally, but they did end up dead. So, I don't think it's possible for these people to come around, because if they did, they'd be ousted by the group. So they have to crash and burn, and or people have to completely abandon the ship, and they have to form a new one, and that's just what is going to sort of have to happen. People thought that the Republican Party. I don't know how old are you?
17.
Oh my God, you're a baby. Okay, so I'm literally twice as old as you.
Okay.
So here's the thing. The Republican Party, by the end of the Bush administration, because the Bush administration was so bad. The Bush administration was every bit as bad as we're realizing now that the Democrats are. The only difference was all of media was against the Bush administration. Basically all of media. It was there was still Fox News, and Fox News was very popular at the time. But even there was no covering for Bush after a while. And however, the media is still trying desperately to try to like cover for the DNC and like say it's like Russian hackers and fake news and all this stupid bullshit.
It's always Russian hackers. Whenever
Yeah.
anything goes wrong in America, it's always Russian hackers.
Well, that's a new narrative. They didn't come up with that until the past year. That's a new one. We never heard about that before. Um, but yeah, but the thing is, like, they think that they can control people with these lies and everything, but what they're really doing is they're just going to discredit themselves to the point that nobody's going to watch them anymore, and pay attention. And so I think that they're going to eat each other like starving piranhas. I have a video about that called Eight Syndromes of Starving Piranha Syndrome.
I saw
Um,
that. That was fabulous.
Thanks. And yeah, and they're just going to crash and burn, and independent media, is going to rise. And granted, independent media will get corrupted eventually. People will sell out, and people that you used to like maybe Dave Rubin will end up getting some cable television show, and it'll be all over. It'll be like, oh, Dave Rubin used to be so cool. What happened? And he's like, oh, they started paying me a lot of money, like, that's the kind of thing that'll probably happen. But like, I don't think that there's any way that the Democratic Party can save itself, because in order to do that, it would, like, I think that the reason that they're trying to blame everything on absurd lies is that if they're trying to get out of power as smoothly as possible, and they're hoping that the Trump administration will go into power, and the Democrats they'll at least be able to distract everybody with the Russian hacker nonsense while they kind of run out the back entrance. Because if people started to realize even 1/10 of the truth, it would implicate many, many people for crimes, I think. Like
Yeah,
actual crimes, treasonous crimes. I think
go to
potentially,
prison.
yeah, no, and that's legit shit. I was talking to a friend of mine that I've met over YouTube who's he has the highest level of security clearance because he was in the Air Force, and that's a really hard thing to get. Like, you have to like train a lot and like go through a lot of red tape to like get high level security clearance. And it's the type, like, if you achieve that through the military, you can get hired at all sorts of companies just because you know how to keep a secret, basically.
Yeah.
And he was talking about that, and like, there's just one count of Hillary Clinton. She sent something to like her nanny or homemaker, her assistant or whatever, and just that one instance of Hillary Clinton sending that one email has 4 separate high level security clearance violations. They each have a potential death sentence. And Hillary did a lot more than that one thing.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's really serious shit if you actually know about the rules of the military. And like, and no, and that would just be a rule for him if he did that type of violation.
Yeah.
She's the Secretary of State, so technically, like, she probably, according to our laws, there's a lot of precedent to say that she should be executed. But there's almost no way that they're going to do that, because she's tied to so many people that if they started opening up that trial, it would be like opening up a gigantic can of worms, and nobody would ever get anything done. So a lot of people are saying, like, it's the Democratic Party is just so twisted and corrupt and awful at this point that it's probably the best thing to do is just let them get out the back door and create a little smoke screen. Because if if people were going to round them up and give them proper justice, it's kind of like the Nazis who got out of they fled to fucking South America.
Oh
And
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know it's like, if everybody was going to like round them up and give them war crimes, and it would just be this never ending thing. And so all these fucking full-blown war crime genocide murderers got away, and that's just how life goes sometimes.
Yeah. So with about 10 minutes left, I want to
Okay.
quickly probe your brain about. So I think that you and me can both agree that the Democratic and Republican parties are so out of touch with people and so corrupt that nobody really wants to vote for them. And I think we saw that this election with how nobody really liked the election and how it presented two of the worst candidates I think we've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm at least very hopeful for this, but how likely do you think it is that we will actually see a complete usurpation of the system and see the rise of new parties, like perhaps the Libertarian and Green parties becoming full-fledged parties and not just third parties?
I really wish I knew the answer to that. We're at the time in which that is most uncertain. Like this, we are at the eye of the storm, and we have no idea what it's going to be like for the next 4 years right now. Um, I really want to say that I hope so, but you know, our normal avenues of organization, you know, things. Okay, people say that when things happen in universities, they happen 5 years later, right?
Yeah,
Because that's when the people are being educated and they enter the workforce, they enter government, and they start, being movers and the shakers. And we are in a very, very tragic place in university education right now. People are being indoctrinated, they're being brainwashed, they're being told not to have critical thought in university. There's a lot of resistance to it, but it's coming from the internet, and the internet is not always the best source. Like people tell me on, people tell me that they care more about what I say on my channel than what they say on CNN. And that's cool because
yeah,
I've been right about a lot of stuff, sure. But at the same time, it's like, I don't fucking know everything. Like I'm not even a journalist. Like, and I don't want to be a journalist. I don't want to be like accurately reporting on facts. So there's this like lack of identity. I would say, well, maybe if universities started developing a real, vigorous, rigorous program, trying to like think about what would be an effective government for this century, in terms of knowing that we have a globalist economy that is becoming more and more nationalistic, but we still have the internet and people are communicating with each other all together. Like, what type of government would be most beneficial, and then like let's rally behind that. I really want to say that there should be some fucking graduate department of political science in some really good school that's going to be doing that,
yeah.
because I want to say that, but I feel like universities are so crippled at this moment that I don't have a whole lot of faith that that's going to go on. So that I don't know about. I kind of feel like honestly the next 4 years are going to be a bit more of a shit show, and the regressive left is just going to continue to crumble and get weaker, and they're going to come up with a weak candidate, and either Trump or whoever he wants to be his successor for the next term is going to get elected again. And that's sort of is my prediction, just because I see things getting worse before they get better politically, but culturally there's going to be a lot of growth, but I don't think it's going to be organized. I think that that people as individuals are going to start to come out of it and realize that they can't listen to their fucking sociology professors and gender studies professors, and that they have to search for different things. But I think it's going to take more than 4 years for that to become an actual political party and to manifest itself in universities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And kind of to go back to what you said about with the college, what happens in colleges happens in 5 years. I think it's kind of amusing to just the thought that with how many people you see being indoctrinated by their college professors completely willingly into an ideology, and there's a lot of people, and the number of white people who are being trained now by society from a very young age to hate themselves for being white, and the same with men being trained to hate themselves because they're men, and etc. I think it's kind of amusing because when you look back in history, you kind of have to think only in Hitler's most wet dreams would he have imagined a society where he could convince the Jews to go through a social program where they would learn to hate themselves
Yeah.
from birth. only he could imagine college campuses where it would become completely acceptable to hate Jews. Only in the most obscene of his dreams where he would. It's just kind of ridiculous to think that we're living in this kind of society that he probably didn't even dream of. He never probably even thought himself that things could get that far ideologically into a bad position.
Yeah, yeah. I would say though that all of this stuff is actually really rather shallow, and like these people. Well, I keep having that optimism. I mean, because I know that there's some people who were true believers in the, the idea that white people can't be racist and blah 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 blah. But at the same time, I look back to 10, 10, 12 years ago, which you wouldn't remember really. You were just a teeny kid, but 10, 12 years ago, during the Bush years, like people were not PC. Like cool people, like people who became SJWs now, more or less, were not PC at all. They would make like retard jokes, and they, would make racist jokes. Like Sarah Silverman, for example. Like, have you heard about her like ridiculous hypocrisy? How she's kind of an SJW comedian now, but she used to make racist jokes all the time.
I've heard about it.
Yeah, well, that was popular then, and it was always this kind of thing where it's like, oh, we're just sort of doing it ironically, but at the same time, if anybody ever got bent out of shape about somebody making a racist joke or something, you would be the least cool person. People would like kick you out of the party. They'd be like, "Shut the fuck up! It was just a joke. You got to go. You cannot start yelling at my friends for making a joke. You have to leave." Where now it's sort of the reverse. And in the late 90s, we also had, or in the 90s, we also had kind of a politically correct era. So things are really quick to go back and forth in that way in American culture. And I think that I think that a lot of it is a lot more tied to politics than people realize. Like I think that when a president is in power, and especially this is another thing that people should keep in mind about Trump, is that Trump has media ties. They don't think he does, but he does. He had a fucking reality show. He has people. Like there's a reason that Milo Yiannopoulos has been, going around to college campuses and saying what he's saying. That didn't happen accidentally. Trump knows how to play media and entertainment. And so when he actually gets into office, there's going to be a gigantic cultural change. And the regressive left is still in power, and they are fighting tooth and nail to, as I said, to sort of just get out the back door without, being exposed for the crimes that they've committed. But I think that, things are really going to change culturally, and people who are young, who've never, you have no concept of this. You were 9 years old when Obama came into office. Yeah, when things change, you're going to be blown away by how different it gets. Like rock music is going to be popular again. Like white guys singing with guitars is going to be like pop music again. And you'll think that was never going to happen, but it will, because that's what happens in political climates as they change. Culture changes. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end there.
Okay.
Thanks for everyone who watches this or is watching this.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks for having me on.
my guest is Prince of Queens. Please do subscribe to him and like his videos. I am Trigger Weasel. Please subscribe and like my videos. I don't know yet if I'm going to turn this into a weekly or monthly kind of thing, but I do definitely want to do this on a semi-regular basis. So comment down below what you want the next topic to be, and I will pick my favorite one. So, thank you for watching, guys. Bye.
Bye.